Welcome back, class. We're going to finish up this chapter of climate and biodiversity, talking about biomes. Um, Biomes, they're the largest subunit of the biosphere. The biosphere being what? It's this unity of living organisms on the planet Earth. Um, if we take into account the understanding of climate, which was introduced in the earlier part of the chapter, uh, we can then see segregation of different climate types on the planet. Um, Biodiversity, by its nature, has to interact with the abiotic environment in the biosphere. So, with variation in the abiotic environment due to climate, as you're going to see the rise and fall of different species and biological organisms. Uh, this is a this is in constant state of flux because of the changing environment. These organisms are dynamic as well. But even in that flux, uh, we can identify some relatively stable biomes. Um, in between those, at the interface of these, we also have transition areas known as ecotones. And you also can notice differences in soil types, as well as some of the microclimates or the smaller changes in climate within a biome as well. As you can expect, uh, different disturbances by nature, as well as the, the recent influences of humans, have caused considerable changes in biomes. On this chart, we see that uh, these biomes, we have 9 of them outlined here, but they are a function of temperature and precipitation. Um, as we can see here, most of them are on the uh, high to moderate temperature scale with a high precipitation, right? So more comfortable uh, conditions biologically, plenty of water, um, and decent temperature leads to a situation where you can have a greater diversity of organisms. There's greater diversity of biomes. As we move to these more cooler and dry climates, and/or dry climates, you'll see um, less diversity of biomes as well as biological organisms. When we characterize all of those biomes, those 9 biomes, we really come out with 4 strong major types of biomes. We have a desert biome, grassland, forest, and tundra. Now, of course, the grassland and the forested biomes can be subdivided uh, into other types of forest, the types of grassland, but our 4 major types will remain the ones you see in front of you. Now, if we're taking this idea of biotic and abiotic interaction to be the leading cause of speciation or organism or species change, or species migration, you see that a desert biome is vastly different from a forested biome. Forested biome has treetop canopy. Uh, because of that canopy, you have the blockage of the sun. You have control of moisture under that canopy. Um, you have much more habitats and hiding places within that for predator-prey interactions versus the desert, which is very little cover canopy. It's very dry, very little habitats, So you can then begin to see uh, why there would be a difference in the colonization of each of those biome types. So the interaction of organisms in their abiotic surroundings uh, is in, has a large impact on biodiversity in those areas. So if you would have uh, if you would gauge biodiversity amongst these four types at both the top and low ends, you would see very little biodiversity. But as you get towards these middle areas, you have more of a propensity for life in various forms. Okay? So as we look around the globe and we see the different uh, biomes and their interface, uh, some of these areas that are known to have high biodiversity, such as the tropical rainforests of South America and Central America, as well as some of the tropical rainforests and savanna of sub-Saharan Africa and of Southeast Asia, we see that those areas uh, are highly forested and have a lot of ground cover, right? Plenty of primary producers that are trapping that energy for the sun and producing it in carbon form, right? But that's not the case when we look at some of these drier and colder areas around the planet. With the United States, they once again it exhibits the four types as well: desert, uh, forest, grassland, as well as tundra. Right? Remember, this is due to uneven heating of the planet. Right? The uneven heating of the planet will provide for the basic resources needed for primary productivity of an ecosystem. So let's move away from some of these terrestrial uh, ecosystems and talk a little bit more about our aquatic ecosystems. So freshwater, um, our freshwater zones are less than 1% volume of saltwater. So that could be lakes, ponds, wetlands, inland wetlands, um, as well as some of the streams and rivers, right? And the differences between those are your standing as well as your flowing bodies. Um, but the difference between that would then be your access to oxygen, right? Your flowing bodies, because of the movement of molecules, promotes aeration of the water. Um, that's thus allowing for aerobic organisms uh, to colonize those environments. Um, and with your standing water, it's more open for the colonization of your aerobic organisms. Okay. And talking about lakes, we're talking about large bodies of fresh water that are formed from surface runoff or precipitation. So these depressions can be caused by glaciation, which is the moving and melting of glaciers, or volcanic activity when a volcano explodes and creates a crater on the surface of the Earth, which then in turn uh, forms crust layer and then is filled by draining or water precipitation. Now, when we start to talk about our lake zones, which are going to be spatially divided, the first and the highest in biodiversity is the littoral zone, which is actually the shallow area uh, where the aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems meet. As you can guess, this would be an area of high biodiversity as your organisms from your terrestrial ecosystem will be meeting the organisms from your aquatic ecosystem. So it's the actual interface between two ecosystems, which normally incurs a lot of biological activity, which is actually true in this case. The next zone is the limnetic zone. It's the open area uh, in the lake, the, the top layer, which gets most of your sunlight as your warmth from the atmosphere as well. Um, in that case, this is where most of your photosynthesis goes in terms of capturing sunlight and to make it into carbon compound that produces food for other organisms and uh, uh, oxygen to support most of the consumers in the ecosystem. So if we look here, this is um, a small, well, a relatively small lake in which we're seeing uh, the littoral zone and the limnetic zone here. And we'll talk later about this profundal and benthic zones. But as I said, this is where the aquatic and terrestrial meet. And you see plenty of organisms in this area. And now in your limnetic zone, you're going to find photosynthetic organisms such as plankton, and then fish that need large amounts of oxygen and actually feed on some of those photosynthetic organisms will be in this area as well. So then is the profundal zone. It's the deep open water, and it's too dark for photosynthesis. So naturally, it's going to be cooler as most of your sunlight is captured in the limnetic, and it's also going to be darker. Then there's the benthic zone, which is the bottom of the lake, and it's mostly organisms that are tolerable of cool environments as well as low oxygen. So you'll have some anaerobes, some obligate anaerobes, and some uh, facultative anaerobes as well. Now, the effects of nutrients on lakes, this is something that is both natural and human influenced. Um, when we talk about oligotrophic uh, conditions, this is not just in lakes, this can be in soil ecosystems as well. These are poorly nourished ecosystems. You normally find lower biodiversity in these areas, and you'll usually find organisms that are specific, have biology that's specifically tailored to exist in those environments. You then have a mesotrophic, which is intermediate, um, and you'll see slightly higher levels of biodiversity. And then your eutrophic, which are these well-nourished ecosystems, and sometimes they're actually overnourished, um, which we can see in these cultural eutrophication situations. And you see that the cultural eutrophication normally comes from the overuse of plant nutrients uh, by agriculturalists as well as landscapers. Uh, Once you put chemical fertilizer uh, on the soil, it's ready to be utilized. If it's not utilized, once you get this inundation of water through precipitation or irrigation, uh, naturally it's going to need to go somewhere. So a lot of those chemicals, because of their size and their chemistry, will attach themselves to soil aggregates, and they will be swept away by runoff. And as we'll learn in a second, um, you get drainage of these areas into streams and rivers that will then make their way to lakes and or oceans. Those nutrients will then be utilized by other organisms that love those types of nutrients, and you'll see just an overgrowth of certain organisms, which will then outcompete other organisms for resources, thus lowering biodiversity and contributing to um, ecological problems. Um, uh, Actually, you may want to look at cultural eutrophication and its impact on the Gulf of Mexico through algal blooms and fish kills. It's It's a very good way to understand this concept of eutrophication. Another class of aquatic ecosystems is wetlands. Um, Wetlands is land that's covered with water all part of the year. They're usually characterized by hydric soils, soils which hold on to water, don't drain very well. Um, some of the types are marshes, you have swamps, you have estuaries, um, and they're dominated by specific types of plant life. Um, you also have specific types of soil life as well, as you can imagine. Um, there'll be more depth to living in areas with a high concentration of slowly decomposing organic. Now on to rivers. Rivers are due to uh, changes in topography and the runoff from precipitation. Um, you have water which takes the uh, path of least resistance and will continue to take that path until it's carved out uh, uh, a mode of transport for itself, which will then become a stream and maybe eventually a river, depending upon the climate. Uh, with that comes the concept of watershed. Watershed is an area of land that in which all the runoff as well as precipitation drains into a lower lying area, particularly a river, stream, or lake. And that can be demonstrated uh, uh, geographically as an area or a unit on a map. So you can actually go on to the Geological Survey's website and look at the different watersheds or drainage basins throughout the U.S. or throughout the entire world. Now on to the marine and aquatic ecosystem, which covers about 70% of the planet. Um, Average depth is 2 miles and has a large variety of species. It's actually very rich in microorganisms, as well as you know, fish species, surface occupying species such as birds, and it provides a very important ecological and economic service to the human population. Once again, you can separate this aquatic ecosystem into zones. You have the coastal zone, right, which is similar to the littoral zone in the lake. Right? It's characterized by uh, meeting of terrestrial and aquatic. Um, if you you can also include the estuaries in that as well. You then have the euphotic zone, similar to the limnetic, the bathyal zone, and the abyssal zone, right? And same characteristics, right? It's all about sunlight and carbon production and temperature, right? The higher up in the zone, the more sunlight, the more warmth, the more oxygen. The lower you get, the colder, the less oxygen, and the darker. And those conditions are going to shape the type of organisms that you see. All right. Um, so just as we spoke, right? Warm, nutrient-rich, many organisms here, high biodiversity, um, interacts with land as well as human activity. Um, this is normally seen as an area uh, which sees a lot of pollution, which still holds true. But because of some of the deep well oil drilling that's going on now as well, it's not just the coastal zones that are endangered, We see the endangerment of the entire uh, marine ecosystem because of drilling, uh, because of undegradable waste, right? Humans have begun to threaten the entire marine ecosystem. Um, yeah, so another thing about the coastal zone is that we see coral reefs, and coral reefs are extremely important to biodiversity, right? Just as forests provide just a diverse set of habitats, coral reefs do the same thing for oceans. So you can observe an immense amount of biodiversity in these coral reefs, and they provide incredible ecosystem services to the planet. And it's a shame that a lot of them have been under destruction uh, through toxification and acidification of our oceans, as well as changes in ocean temperatures as well. So we did talk about these um, and their similarities to the zones that are found in freshwater, and that's the end of the presentation. Um, Once again, I'm going to stress to you the importance of doing the reading as well as taking a look through the actual uh, PowerPoint presentation. The presentation itself has more slides and more information on it that you will be tested on. Uh, but remember, when I do my video lectures, I may stray into different areas that may not be covered in the book or in the PowerPoint lectures, um, I'm sorry, PowerPoint slides. Um, but you are responsible for those things as well. So please pay attention to all three aspects of the course, and we'll be fine moving forward. Thank you.